Hi, welcome back to this video on tuning Kadee couplers. The last thing we talked about in the first part of this video was removing any lateral motion. Another item to check when trying to get rid of this lateral motion is the track gauge at the magnet. It should be 45 millimeters. Not 44.5 millimeters, not 45.5 millimeters. 45 millimeters exactly. The last item on this lateral motion issue is wheel gauge. The wheel gauge may be too narrow. The wheel gauge on Aristocraft and USA train cars tend to be just a hair narrow. I found that aftermarket wheels to be very tight in gauge. Properly gauged wheels will not move laterally when on properly gauged track. It is quite easy to adjust to correct the gauge. Gauge is too narrow. Wheels do not fit into the slots. This is how we widen the gauge. Just a few taps with the hammer will do it. This is how we narrow the gauge if it's too wide. Here we are. Wheels are in gauge. Switching works best on level track. Kadees will not work if the magnet is on a substantial grade. They will be okay on very slight grades if you consider the next issue. Most people really like free-rolling cars and will even install ball bearings to make them as free-rolling as possible. That's fine for pulling long trains, but for switching, we want a little resistance. When uncoupling, the car being uncoupled should put just a little pressure against the coupler pushing it. I put about 8 ounces of weight into each car. They track better and provide just enough resistance to make uncoupling more reliable. Sometimes I will replace one of the spacing washers discussed earlier with a lock washer just to provide a little more drag. This keeps a stiff breeze from blowing a car down the track or from rolling down a slight grade. This may pose a problem after you have collected 30 or so cars from the yard and are ready for a trip over the pike. Yes, all the resistance from the cars adds up, but it provides a good excuse for some double heading. When a coupler does not snap over the way it should, a puff of dry lubricant may free it. Kadee sells a product called Grease'em, but any graphite lubricant will do. But to be honest, I have never found that to solve the problem. It is always something else. When I get a sluggish coupler, I take it apart, check the springs, and clean it out. In several cases I found that a bug had built a nest or web inside the coupler that kept the knuckle from swinging as it should. Also, do not tighten the mounting screws too much. That will distort the box in which holds the coupler shank and may keep the coupler from moving freely. For the last couple months I've been doing a troubleshooting marathon with Kadee couplers, and I have incorporated all of the tricks that I've talked about so far. But still, after all of this tweaking was done, I had a few couplers that just would not uncouple. The couplers would move to the side when pushed over a magnet when alone, but they would not uncouple from another car. This problem really had me stumped. I watched the uncoupling process closely. I took pictures, but I could not see any difference in behavior between those couplers that worked and those that did not. But I started to appreciate one aspect of uncoupling that I had not looked at closely before. Not only does the coupler move to the side over a magnet, the knuckle opens a bit to release the knuckle of the other coupler. The knuckle is held closed by a small coil spring on the side of the coupler. On a hunch, I removed the spring on one of the problem couplers and weakened it a bit by clipping off the last coil. Weakening the spring made the opening of the knuckle just a bit easier. It worked. I made that modification to the remaining problem couplers, and now I have 100% reliable operation. Now you know everything I do about Kadee couplers. Fix those couplers and let's do some switching.